You are listening to A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library podcast. It's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library, and today I'm joined by Detroit-based singer-songwriter Mike Ward. Mike Ward, Psychosongs. Mike Ward, how are you?
I'm really good, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, we are looking forward to your performance here at the library for our First Stop Friday local showcase. We love doing these concerts. You, dear listener, are hearing this, I think, with enough time to mark your calendars and make your arrangements. Friday, April 7th. So we're looking forward to that, Mike. And right before we start rolling, Mike already gave me a sneak preview. You're going to have a special guest, which is exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to be joined by cellist Sarah Gibson.
Incredible.
Really excited about that.
And this is all concurring right around the time when you're putting out another album. This is like your third album in as many years.
Yeah, it's a third full album, and last year I had an EP, and I think I had a single somewhere in there. It's just been, I did a lot of writing during COVID.
Right.
During the lockdown, I did a lot of writing and had a lot of material, and I'm blessed to be part of a few songwriting groups now. They have us writing monthly, and put out a song each month. And in between, I've been doing a few workshops. So I think that's contributed to I know it's contributed to the quality of the work, but having songs that I'm happy with and being able to put them out. And this record, Love Never Rests, which does release on Bandcamp on the 7th.
Exciting.
Yeah. And that's a Bandcamp Friday. I'll just say that's a Bandcamp Friday, which is, nice for the artists because we get 100% of they don't take any fees out. And so that's a nice deal. If you want to get the album digitally, that's the way to do it. It'll be on Spotify a week later and iTunes and all of that. And physical copies I'll have at the show and at shows.
Before we go anywhere, I think when listeners to this podcast who might not be familiar with you yet, they might see the title of the podcast, or they might go look you up online, and they might see Mike Ward, Psychosongs. Could you just explain the whole Psychosongs origin? Growing
up, having a really bad Irish temper and playing hockey my whole life, my nickname became Psycho Ward. I actually had an instructor in college who gave me that moniker, and he went further to say, yeah, and when you have kids, there'll be maternity ward, and every type of ward was used, but Psycho Ward kind of stuck. And I had a really bad temper for a long time. I think it was grown out of some passion for the creative work I was doing in advertising, but also the frustration of that business can weigh on you, the stress of it. It's a high stress, high strung business, and I was in it, in my early 20s, and probably needed an outlet because at that point I had sort of set music aside a little bit to concentrate on doing what I thought would make a good living, and it was a good living, but that followed me all throughout my early years, and it just kind of stuck. So when I started just sort of self-publishing music on my own, just putting songs together, I used Psychosongs, and I had a freelance business on the side doing design, and I called that psychographics. So the psycho part of it has sort of kind of lived with me since my teens. Mm-hmm.
You've come out the other end of this all not angry at all. You have a very calming presence. I've known you for the last 4-ish years, and you've been just a constant calming presence with like a message in your music that really fortifies that sense of calm and restoration or fortitude or just positivity. In fact, there's a song on the new record that's all about looking for something positive,
Yeah.
So you've been on a quest for the positive.
I think I have.
Yeah.
And if you step on the ice with me, though, still today, I still play hockey, and my buddies who play hockey with me can attest that I still have a bit of an edge. Adrenaline takes over. But talk about the music that you've been making and where that comes from. When have you been a lifelong folkie? Have you been a folk singer? Totally. From early days in my house, I'm the 7th out of 8 kids. So I not only did my mom and dad have, a lot of music around, and my dad and my mom were both, they were interested in lots of different genres, but they had music from like Odetta, Ian and Sylvia, Pete Seeger, real, stalwarts of folk music. And then my older brothers and sisters, they started Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles and Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan, and those were around. So I was sort of absorbing all that. In the meantime, I was singing in choirs. I was in church choirs. Mm-hmm. So I think of myself as a vocalist first, mm-hmm. And I play. I try to improve my playing. I feel like I accompany myself, as well as I can. And I like the adage of Jackson Browne, who says, "You should always strive to be the worst player in your own band." Which, in his case, he's still an awfully good player, but sure. He said, surround yourself with great players, and certainly on this record, that's no exception. That has been one of the real joys of taking the songs as I've written them, as simple, folk songs, and then adding elements to them to just give them a little more life, mm-hmm. For the recordings. And, I've now realized that recording lives as one thing. My live shows live as another thing. And, I don't have the wherewithal to put a band out there all the time. I so admire everyone who sort of lives that life and rehearses with bands and puts shows together. For me, it works. I just tend to always be a solo or probably at the most a duo or a trio, mm-hmm. But simple performances. But gathering all the people for the record was a blast.
Oh yes, we're gonna get to that because there's some incredible cameos on Love Never Rests, the newest album. But let's look back to the previous two, Particles to Pearls, Darkness Light. Like, thinking on those influences from your youth, what do you think? What was it about them that really stuck with you? Because you have very reflective songwriting, you have storytelling going on. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about those aspects of folk and what you appreciate about those classic troubadours? Yeah,
well, I think Paul Simon was a huge influence, just in terms of how he used a little bit of poetry, but yet used common language at the same time, to get his points across. And I think Dylan, to a certain degree, did the same thing. I was probably less of a Dylan devotee. Paul Simon was sort of my sweet spot. And then that sort of transitioned later to being heavily influenced by Springsteen, especially the Nebraska album, mm-hmm. The sort of rawness of that. And it sort of let me, into that side of it. And John Prine has always been sort of, to me, the gold standard. There's a lot of other great singer-songwriters that I admire, who put a spin on things that sometimes they can do something, that makes you smile or makes you laugh. Like Lyle Lovett, has done that on several of his albums, and Robert Earl Keen and Loudon Wainwright III, and people like that. I kind of gravitate to those, and I think when you listen to a song like Content, or you listen to, even Our Turn to Shine, or other songs that I've done that they kind of try and balance that sense of humor with a sense of like maybe biting, either politically or personally. Mm-hmm. And then I write a lot about from a personal standpoint, although I try and sort of make it accessible, stories about my family or stories about people that I've known in my life or situations that have happened to me. Or in some cases, they might be an amalgam. Like there's a song that's called Broken. It's sort of an amalgam from a lot of different stories of songwriters that I've known who were making a bare living, on the road. And so I sort of, borrowed from a lot of those influences.
Mm-hmm. The thing about John Prine, he's singing about a screen door, or Paul Simon when he sings about "You Can Call Me Al." He has that lyric, "A man walks down the street." So you do that sort of same thing where you're painting these pictures and there's a character and you're a setting and there's emotion and you can see them because the lyrics are, yes, poetic at points, but also really forthright, and that common language that you talked about. It's not necessarily the stuck inside a mobile with the Memphis Blues again, or the all along the Watchtower where there's kind of these kind of flourishes. Like one of the songs, and we will get to the cameos too, but one of the songs that I think we can maybe transition to is, because you were kind of hinting at it, is a newer song. I think it's called Smile. It's about photographs. That one really hits me, and that is all about you and your family. What was it like to write that one?
My dad was a dentist. Okay. And honestly, the start of that song came from when he passed away. He was 95, lived to 95, practiced dentistry till he was 85. But he was also a phenomenal amateur photographer and videographer. He shot 16 millimeter, he shot 35 millimeter slides, 2.25 slides. He had a Polaroid camera early on. He had Modern Photography magazines stacked up everywhere. When he passed away, we had this huge family portrait that my friend shot, and it was just done really quickly. We were in the back room at the place where we all had lunch, and we hadn't had this many family members together in one place in a very long time. So we all sat down and we got this really great series of shots. And in some of them we were cracking up and some of them were really serious and that. But the one common thing that you see in our family are our smile. Mm-hmm. The smile my dad and my mom gave us. And so, being a dentist, I sort of wanted to play with that and play with that smile and play with kind of sometimes, you smile though you're aching inside. It's like that was the picture that I was looking at. And that was the sort of the inspiration for it.
And then let's kind of get into the cameos too. Okay. There's another song that's really powerful and I think features one of your own personal best vocal performances. Rise up, fly and soar. Rise up, falling no more. No more falling. If I can get the title right, is it Falling No More?
Yeah, Falling No More.
Falling No More, which features the singers from Giacomo.
Giacomo, and it also features Amy Petty. That song, so there's a lot of songs on this record that were a result of song prompts mm-hmm. from the Song Hall group that I'm part of. It's a group of songwriters pretty much all around Michigan. It's getting wider. There's actually one from Portland and one from Texas and one, I think, someone from Nashville now. But Kyle Rashi, who I'm going to do a show with later this month on the April 22nd, but he was a Kerrville winner last year, Kerrville Songwriting Award winner, and the year before a finalist.
He writes beautifully about Michigan. Michigan really locations. Does. Yeah.
He's a great songwriter, but he's also really good, like he's sort of a good cheerleader for all of us. You know, we have a prompt every month, and by midnight the last month, like on the 31st, I've got to have a song posted this week. And the prompt for Falling No More was actually Fall. It was that, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And I had this thought of falling from grace, and was where I kind of started. And I sort of started the falling motif, and then I didn't want to have it all be, you know, on the downside of it. And so I wanted to sort of pull it back up at the end, you know, to rising up, and kind of, it's sort of, you know, trying to balance that. It's like there's struggles, there's tough times, but we all have to look for wherever we can to rise or to find little glints of hope.
Yeah, and that's Tessa and Allison from Giacomo, who have beautiful singing voices and awesome artists in their own right, who add to that. And then the opening track, Currency of Forgiveness.
It's a long haul, there's bumps in the road. It's only heavy if you don't share the load. No regrets, big or small. Always say I love you before nightfall. Worth all you have and nothing less. Life keeps you up at night, but love never rests. Isn't this why?
Help me out, Mike. I think the title of the album is threaded into the lyrics of that song.
It is.
And that song features Annie Bacon, who's also great, another Michigan artist.
Yeah, Annie Bacon just came in and she joined me on 2 of these tracks, and I met Annie a few years ago, and we just hit it off. And this is the first time we've actually collaborated on a piece, but we've done I think 3 house shows together, where we've just the 2 of us trading songs and stories and had a great time. And I just love her. She's got so much spirit, and she's a master at harmony. I mean, she's just her distinctive vocal. I mean, she came in and she treated that with such care. And then, you know, having one of the other artists on the record is Grant Flick, played violin on that track. And he was new to me, and I met him through David Roof. And he was, I don't know if you're familiar with the North Country Opera, the folk opera that Jay Steelstra wrote 40 years ago. This late summer into fall, they revived that for the 40th anniversary of the opera. It's a folk opera all about Michigan, and it's great. And Grant and David Roof were part of the band that was playing for that, and it featured Rochelle Clark, Chris Buhelis, Brad Phillips were in the cast. And when David was, we were trying to find a violin player who had the same, kind of a similar feel to Lucy Little, who was on Particles and is also on Lost Love Letters on these tracks. And Grant he's just amazing. Mm-hmm. He does some work with Django Phonic.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Out of Ann Arbor. But that song, Currency, that was inspired by a letter written to a young couple that a friend of mine, his daughter's best friend was getting married, and they were going to the wedding, and they had a gift, but what they wanted to give them was something based on their 46 years together. Mm-hmm. And when I read the letter, I was like, there's some great advice in there about just how you have to sometimes look past the immediate argument or the immediate chaos or whatever is happening and remember why you are together, why you were attracted, or why you stick together. And that was where the song came from. And that the line about life keeps you up at night, but love never rests is where the title comes from.
When I heard Love Never Rests, it seemed like it was calling back to or in dialogue with the title of a song from Particles, which was Let Love Lead the Way. Let Love Lead the Way. And I was like, well, this is, again, coming back to that calming presence that you are really bringing this energy of love when we are in tumultuous times, when we are in dark times, and especially when we were in really existential times, 2020, we're all in our houses, etc. But you have darkness and the light, you're talking about light. Particles was really thinking about time. Here on Love Never Rests, maybe it is more life. I hear a lot of that word fortitude, resolve, picking yourself back up, that whole kind of thing. But when you think about this album, what do you see as the thread leading the way, as it were?
Well, I think that thread of resiliency, of finding ways to push through, and keep yourself kind of balanced on that. And a little the All We're Hoping For has a little bit of that. That song does, and it it's a simple piece, but has that message is what I'm really striving for. And I think, the common thread, I think on a lot of the songs is either a lost love or a love that has, in the song There I Was, that was a little bit of a love that never really came to fruition. And, there are those moments. And then there's the love of family between, with Smile and Sunday Morning. Sunday Morning was not, the lyrics were not written by me. That was a poem that we found after my mom had passed away. It was on a floppy disk that was labeled recipes. And we wanted her recipes. And when we got the disc open, we found a file of her poem. And this was something we didn't, we knew my mom was creative in a lot of areas but that was not one of the things that we sort of knew about her. And this poem, I didn't change a word. I just repeated a couple of phrases, and it seemed appropriate to finish this record with that.
Reverent. There's a lot of reverence on this album. There's really a lot of reverence on a lot of your music. I almost imagine a lot of your songs being distilled to you saying, don't you see how special this is? Maybe fill in the blank of what you might be singing about.
Right.
But that just appreciation of the present, appreciation of what we have. And it's really refreshing to listen to in an age that feels like it's becoming an ever more cynical age. You're an antidote. You're an antidote to cynicism.
And I can be as cynical as the next person, but I try to be, put a positive spin. And I think, my relationship with my wife helps that along.
You're on the cover together.
Yeah, that's not a coincidence. That she has always been right there beside me and really has supported this. And I know that it wouldn't happen without her support, And on this project, she really has blossomed in her own right in terms of she joined the board of the Trinity House, and she's become a trusted friend to a lot of musicians and to a lot of venues. And, even as a Trinity House representative, she's gone out to like the Folk Alliance conference, and she had a room that she booked of people and met all these artists and then reported back to the Trinity House. And she's going to do the same thing at SURFA, which is in the Southeast, in May. And so, having her on the cover, we're in this together. While I'm doing the singing and the playing, she's out there connecting with people in a way, honestly, that I'm sometimes uncomfortable doing. She's always been a person that, we can be standing in line at a movie and all of a sudden she's in a conversation and, knows history about this person. It's a special gift that she has. And I think if you ask most of the musicians in our circle, they will tell you, without a doubt, that she's just a special force in this music area now.
We should say this is Angela, of course, we're talking about. We didn't
Angela.
properly identify her.
Sorry.
But we've been talking about light, and it just seems like she brings light into every room. And into your life too, Mike. You sound very reverent for your
I am, and I'm very thankful.
Your better half. Yes.
Yeah. And I reference that an occasion in songs. There's a reference to Angie in Compact Life, and that's kind of a lighthearted song, but there's a tip in the last verse that is definitely to her, and there's also a verse in I Follow, which I Follow is as deep as I Go, and that's a song that Kyle really gave me some good lyrical help on. That was another Song Hall song. I think there's 6 on this record.
And we've kind of abstractly referenced Dylan. I mentioned folk singer, and I think that Dylan kind of conflates that into thinking that you're necessarily maybe being in that classic vein of Woody Guthrie and doing protest songs. Mm-hmm. And you have songs where you do address and have social commentary, but there is a lot of songs that, again, are just more of that reverent, are you aware of what's special in your life, that kind of like really just warm, restorative feeling that you can give people. And it reminded me, when we think of folk singers, of something Audra Kubat, one of your contemporaries here in this community, said that, well, when you think of folk singer, we are singing about folk. We're singing about people. We're singing about things that the folks can relate to. We're singing about the stories of people. Yeah. So that is the folk singer. I think you've really come into that mold. So
thank you.
Also, it's just
that's what it's interesting because Dave Roof, who I've worked with on 3 records now, and actually he's the 3 records, the EP and the single. Career Advice, he's been at my side and is a trusted confidant, and but he said when we completed the mix on this, he said this is a really fine folk album.
Absolutely. And it features incredible cameos from other folks, literal folk singers. And it's just a reflection of how deep that bench is, to make a sports analogy of the even just southeastern Michigan's little pocket of folk singers, let alone the greater Michigan area.
And the talented players, beyond, you've got, so I had Amy Petty, Jill Jack is on There I Was, and Jill Jack actually provided the kind of the seed to that song. She had a line that she had been sort of playing with, but she didn't really have anything going with it. And it was called The Wrong Side of Nowhere. That was where she had it. And she said, if you want to play with it, you know. And then we had one session at my place, and then, you know, she had a horrible health year. You know, she had long COVID and heart issues that were led her to basically step back. When I was recording that, I recorded my part and we got everything done, and she was starting to do shows again. And I contacted her and I said, hey, here's the track. How would you feel about coming in and adding your vocal to it? And she jumped at it, and that was really, really excited that she could be part of it, because she sort of started it, and that's fun.
Excellent. And so what are you looking forward to in the year ahead? Or just the week ahead even?
So, well, you know, tomorrow night I'm starting the Funky Rivertown Fest, which is going to be the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, and 1st. So
out in Ypsilanti?
Out in Ypsilanti. David Roof put it together, and man, it's got a lineup, like crazy good lineup. And I'm part of the opening night. There's 2 sets of 4 songwriters, so we'll do 2 rounds. And there's Mark Jewett and Joe Sarapair, Dan Hall, Morris Lewis, Blinn, I think is his last name, Stuart Bembo, Chris McGorry, and Candy Frederick. So really good company there. And then, you know, it goes for the rest of the week, and it ends Saturday. So I'm part of tomorrow night, and then next week is the show at the library.
That's right,
and
folks.
I'm so looking forward to that, because we release on Bandcamp that day. And Lori Stratton has been helping me with a lot of my communications and pieces. And as I understand, the Detroit News is going to have a little feature on the 6th about it. So that's kind of cool. And then from there, we then hit the road a little bit more. The 22nd, I'm at Wiltsey's out in Clarkston with Kyle Rashi. And then May is on the road. I'm going to Akron on the 29th of May, or 29th of April. Then going down to Asheville, North Carolina to the Folk Conference. And May 13th, I'm in Grand Rapids at the Stray. And May 19th, I'm in Chicago at Wesley's. And then May 20th at the Coffee House in Milwaukee. So, and then the summer's going to be filled with festivals and shows.
Excellent. Well, folks listening to this podcast, it dropped, if you're listening to it on the day of Saturday, April 1st, that means you have plenty of time to get ready to get to the newsstand on April 6th to pick up the Detroit News. You could also tune in to WDET on Monday, April 3rd, and I'll play a song. And then you can see Mike here at the library on April 7th. We're looking forward to it. Mike, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. And Jeff, I just have to say, you have been an incredible supporter of my music and of what I'm doing. You know, none of us who are independent artists get to do this without the help of a lot of people. And you have been one of those people that have, for me, you know, for all of us in this area, especially independent, you know, bands or independent artists, to get on the air on WDET is so cool, because it's like all of a sudden you get texts from your friends and they're like, hey, you know, it's like, you know, it's Kyle has a funny song about validation of, you know, that he says, you know, it's like one of the few jobs you have that, you know, when you tell somebody you're a singer-songwriter, it's like you have to kind of prove it. You know, you have to go, yes, okay, here I am. There's my page on iTunes. I remember doing that in a bar in Chicago and, you know, pulling it up on iTunes and going, yeah, there I am. And the guy was like, oh, you really are.
Oh, man.
But thank you.
Oh, happy to. Well, thank you, listener at home, for listening to this latest episode of A Little Too Quiet. It's the Ferndale Library Podcast, and it's brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. If you want to support us, you can go to ferndalefriends.org, but it would also be helpful if you rate, review, and subscribe, or if you leave a comment, it'll help us find more listeners. Or you could just tell your friends about us, and tell your friends about Mike Ward, and tell them to come to the library on April 7th. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks for listening.
We